Welcome to part 2 of the Preban Graveyard documentary. Over the next few minutes, we will show you how we used modern, non-invasive archaeological technologies to complete a survey of and fully record Preban Graveyard. The survey has deepened our understanding of the ancient and intriguing site that is Preban Graveyard.
The graveyard was neglected and it became overgrown, and the hedgerows around the periphery of the graveyard grew into the graveyard, and 3 or 4 laurel trees in the centre of the graveyard actually covered about 30% of the graveyard.
Actually, there's supposed to be a story about these yew trees going back generations. That why they were supposed to be sown in graveyards. They're going back then, farmers had only this little small, what would you call them, little small holdings, little small cheebeans, and they used to use the graveyards for grazing their stock. So the people over the graveyards apparently sowed these yew trees with the intent, supposedly, of poisoning the animals, which is one way of keeping them out. So that's about it.
A small group of neighbours took away all the laurel and cleared up the bushes around the edge. And at that stage we looked for and we got assistance from Foss.
I'm John Mullen and I'm Supervisor of Tinahely Community Employment. Preban Committee for the Graveyard Committee came to us a number of years ago in relation to a project they had with Preban Cemetery. The cemetery had been overgrown over a number of years of neglect, and they wanted to restore it to allow some studies done and to have it potentially developed as a tourist attraction, as well as bring again the visitors who visit Preban to see their relatives to have a little bit more enjoyment of the site. So our community employment scheme, which offers participants the opportunity of 19.5 hours work experience plus training, it offered them the chance to be involved in a restoration project really, and it was the first restoration project which we were involved in. So several of our participants went up and cleared the site of overgrown vegetation, which involved like sawing down overgrown trees, mowing down the grass and revealing many of the headstones that hadn't been revealed to the light of day for maybe decades. So this was really a labour of love for the participants, because they got to see the value of such work to the community, as well as revealing a very interesting and historic site that some of they and myself had not been aware of.
We're 2 guys that were on a FOSS scheme that caters for Annacurra and Preban. Basically what we do is during the summer we're going to the various graveyards, keeping them clean, cutting grass. I am very lucky that I'm actually working on the FOSS scheme in Annacurra, because personally I'm very interested in going around to the various graveyards, looking at the various inscriptions on the graveyards and the various spellings going back when people probably weren't able to spell their own names, just spelt it the way it sounded.
So I took up the stone, dug it up and come across this rock art in the stone, all these holes in the stone. And we have discovered a tree of them up here in Preban.
Joe's here actually on the project longer than I'm on it. I'm only on it since last June. Then of course Joe was a lot older than me, he'd have to be here longer than me. But when I came here it was like a wilderness and Joe cleaned it up.
Now that the vegetation was cleared, we were ready to approach the County Wicklow Partnership for funding to carry out an archaeological survey of the cemetery of Preban.
Preban Cemetery Committee contacted us in County Wicklow Partnership with a view to accessing some funding towards the development of the graveyard. We looked at funding under the Leader Rural Development Programme, which provides some heritage assistance for community groups undertaking heritage type activities. We were particularly interested in facilitating this project, given the historical significance of the project itself, but also given the fact that the works being done were non-invasive, but at the same time would provide information. In the development of this project, the Preban Cemetery Committee would have liaised firstly with the local heritage officer, but also with the Department of Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht, which we would encourage under heritage type activities to make sure that the work being done does not in any way damage the heritage of the area, but seeks to both create awareness and protect the local amenities in local communities. We would see heritage as a living thing for communities to engage in. It's not just a part of our past, but it's very much in the present as well. So we do like to see community groups come in and develop a heritage project that will increase awareness in the local community of the heritage asset they have in their area, and also to preserve that for generations to come.
Once funding was secured, we began the survey. The first thing we wanted to do was to capture the cemetery as it is today, and we did this through aerial photography using a quadricopter.
I have the camera facing straight down, and we're going to sit it over the graveyard, and Ciara hopefully is going to guide me to be over the cemetery. Instead of me trying to guess a wee bit that we're over the site, the goggles will actually give us the position, a visual of where it is over the site.
Wow.
Oh my god, really? Go back towards us a wee bit more there.
I think I'm at my limit now.
Yeah. Can you come back towards us here a wee bit?
Yeah.
That's it, perfect.
Next on the list was a laser scan. And what this will give us is a 2D plan of the site where we can physically go around and number all the headstones and take photographs of them.
So the laser scanner has become a very important tool in digital capture, and it's been used a lot now in heritage and archaeological work to virtually capture sites, artefacts and structures. The laser scanner on site today is being used to physically record the topography and the features, including the headstones and gravestones on the site. Laser scanning is a process, a survey process, where thousands of individual pulses of laser are sent out by the laser scanner. Those lasers hit a target and actually record the position of the laser where it physically hits the target. Those measurements then give us a full digital capture. It's not virtual reality, it's actual digital capture of the site and the site geometry. In this case, all the humps and bumps in the graveyard, some of the early burials, for example, the surfaces of them will be picked up, and also the upstanding features.
Once we had our map, we were now ready to record the headstones.
We started recording the headstones this time last year. So what we did is we just took a notebook and we put all the details of each headstone as much as we could read it, and put a page for each headstone in our little notebook. So we basically arranged the graveyard as far as we could into rows. So what we have actually is 19 rows of headstones, and then some of them are quite short. Some of them only have 7 or 8 graves, and some of them have, the longest one is up to 19 graves. Now there were some very interesting facts that came out at the end of it. The number of names that we had recorded at the end of the day was approximately 300, and 200 of those names were men and only 100 women. There was a couple of very interesting headstones in the graveyard, and one in particular is here behind me, and it's facing in the opposite direction to all of the others.
It is very difficult to read the inscription on the headstone. However, a night photograph depicted IHS, which represents the name Jesus, and we could also make out the year 1775. However, who this person was, we still do not know.
So a really good way of recording headstones for the future is to keep a photographic record. And here in Preban we have a plan, and all the headstones are numbered. So we are trying to take a photograph of each headstone that then can be linked up to that plan. And I think it's one of the best ways, because anyone can do it. It's very easy, it's very cheap, and it gives a good record of the condition of the stone. All you need is a digital camera, and most digital cameras today are very good. So you don't need to go out of your way. And I try to go out in the beginning of the day, or the first half of the day, when the light shines on the headstone itself, as it makes the inscriptions stand out really nicely. It's very important as well to keep the camera stable. So if you have access to a tripod, that really makes it easier, and the photographs will look so much better. This is especially for photography, but you could use a strong flashlight, for instance. I don't use it during the daytime, but if you go out at dusk or even during the night, using the light and holding it at a roughly 45 degrees angle, you will be able to see things that are not visible during daytime.
Dreams don't last, though dreams are not forgotten.
When recording headstones, it's also important to record what's above and below the inscription, to see what symbolism was used, and to see was there a stonemason mark at all on the headstone. Here what we have now these are all the inscriptions that you've recorded from the headstones, and we've put them into graveyard recording sheets. And so the next stage then is what we're going to do is all of these has a number, and what we'll do is go around and record the stone type, if it's sandstone, granite, slate, the number of people commemorated, the condition of the monument, the condition of the inscription, and then the stonemason or the undertaker. And then also we'll record a sketch of the top of the stone to see what shape the stone was. Like so, some of the time you'll see the IHS. So this again is called the neoclassical because of the Greek and the motifs and scenes are from classical Greece. Following the discovery of Neolithic rock art, which may be up to 5,000 years old, we wanted to capture as much detail as possible from the ephemeral detail on the stone. And so we commissioned an object scan.
So at the moment then we've set up what is called an object scanner. And these type of scanners are used for very fine and very small artifacts, whether they're archaeological or manufactured artifacts. It has a very short range, very different to the large terrestrial scanner that we use to survey the entire graveyard. So very similar to using a scanner at home for documenting a flat piece of paper. We set the scanner up here quite close to the object that we want to scan. In this case we're after some inscriptions, detail on the face of the stone here, and all I'm doing here is working with the software on the computer to set up the best survey parameters to hopefully pick up these inscriptions. We took multiple scans of the panel and then we put them all together, but I can see the features that you were interested in. Okay. Just here, and I think there's a very, very subtle set of three, and then one here just to the top.
Wow, yeah.
And yeah, sorry, even out to the left, yeah. Every time I look at it, I see more.
Rubbings of headstones is another great way to capture the finer detail. We used grease-proof paper, which was stuck onto the headstone with masking tape, and then we used carbon paper and lightly rubbed the headstone using the pressure of our fingers to bring out the detail. So the best day to do a rubbing is on a nice, still, calm day when the headstone is dry. Because I was using the sponge, but the sponge isn't, and it doesn't hold. Wow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's brilliant. You get the scenes from this.
Yeah. Having established what was above the ground at Preban, we were now curious to see what lay beneath. Was there archaeology beyond the modern enclosing wall of Preban graveyard, in what's known locally as the church field? In order to see what archaeology, if any, was present, we commissioned a geophysical survey.
What I'm going to be doing is surveying to the west of the graveyard and to the north of the graveyard to see if we've got any features extending out from the actual graveyard or that are associated with the graveyard. Yeah. So whether it be an enclosure ditch or any other features that might be here, we'll see if we can pick some of them up. What I've got here, this is a magnetometer instrument, and what it does is it measures very subtle variations in the magnetic field with the idea that archaeological features such as ditches or pits or burnt spreads are slightly more magnetic than the background readings. So as I conduct the survey, I literally take readings, very fine intervals, and hopefully I can see the features then. And literally just collect the data, and then I'll basically produce a map of the magnetic signature of the ground. So.
Okay, and how far deep can you read?
This typically will go between 0.5 metre and 1 metre, but it very much depends on how magnetic the material is, because if I have something like a kiln or a hearth, that can be very deep and I'll still pick it up because it's very magnetic, because it was subject to intense burning. The rate that it beeps according to how magnetic things are. The resistance survey is the frame that you move along. Yeah, the reason why we're doing it here, well, partly because the magnetometer survey, it just wouldn't work very well here. You know, we've got a lot of modern material, the modern fencing and stuff, and that instrument is very sensitive, so we would get a lot of disturbance. So this is better in that respect, and also this is specifically used to find any structural remains.
Okay.
So, you know, if we have any further grave cuts in this area that we're looking at here, or if we're looking for, you know, any buildings, evidence of buildings, and this is the piece of equipment to use, really.
So Deirdre, hopefully this project now, this short film, will inspire other groups to do something similar.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Preban is a great example of what can be done in a local area with a small group of people who are very committed and interested in it. And sure, I mean, historic graveyards are so interesting and very important for local areas. They're really treasure troves of all the history of what has gone before, of the genealogy, of all the families and all the stories that go with that. And I think that's come out very well through this Preban project. And of course the whole thing of getting expert advice on board, doing a bit of research, doing a bit of desktop research, and then going out and actually doing all the work on the ground as well. So I think this is a great project. It's a great example for other places. The first thing I would always tell people if they're planning a project such as has been done at Preban is to first find out the ownership. A lot of graveyards are owned by local authorities, some others are owned by church bodies. Really find out the ownership and get permission to get started, and that's very important. Any historic graveyard where you have recorded monuments, it's very important to know this and to notify National Monument Service of any proposals to do work, and you may need permission to do, depending on what sort of work has been done. Also, contact your local heritage officer and do a little bit of research, and I would certainly work with groups to try and guide them in the right direction. There's an awful lot of advice and guidance available, a lot of available from the Heritage Council's website, and there's some very good publications.
Well, hopefully that's definitely one of the aims that we hope. We hope that we'll inspire other groups to do something similar, and I think they'll be astounded at what lies underneath the vegetation and when they get going.
Saying, mother, don't you know me? Sure, I've only got a cold, but the purple spots upon her cheek, the tragic story told. There's a graveyard here in Preban, where the flowers sadly blow. There's a broken-hearted mother kneeling o'er a lonely grave, saying, my Noreen, you've been calling, been a long year since you've been gone. 'Twas the curse of emigration that lay you low, my Noreen Bond.
So we've just gotten in the preliminary results of the geophysical survey, and it's very exciting because it's just what we'd hoped for. The geophysic results reveal that to the north of the burial site, approximately 100 metres, there was archaeology in the form of pits which had been heat affected. West of the graveyard, the purple curvilinear feature indicates a ditch which was enclosed the medieval church and burial site, and this was about 100 metres in diameter. The red and blue dots are further indications of activity. The red identify features which were subject to heat, perhaps kilns for drying cereal or small hearths. What is very interesting, however, is the light blue areas just west of the purple enclosing ditches. What this may represent is an earlier phase of activity that predates the church site at Preban. How much earlier, we do not know. Are they related to the Neolithic rock art? We still do not know. The only way we'd find out would be through excavation.
Now come all you fair young colleens, Think well before you go. From your humble homes in Ireland, what's beyond you'll never know. For what is gold and what is silver, when your health and strength have gone? When you think of emigration, won't you think of Noreen Bond? When you think of emigration, say a prayer for Noreen.